This is Everyday Expertise, and I'm Angela, and I'm here with David Daneman. He is a webcomic creator, and he's also the editor of a new anthology that is currently on Kickstarter called Launch Party. And we're going to talk to him about that and some of his other work, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks. So, David, what is Launch Party?
Launch Party is a webcomics anthology that I'm currently kickstarting. Mm-hmm. There's going to be 75 different comic strips in it from 25 different artists. Mm-hmm. They're from all around the world, 11 different countries. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a first of its kind deal. I'm not saying it's the first collection of webcomics ever, but normally when I see them, they are themed around something. So like LGBTQ representation or like destigmatizing depression or something like that. And this one does not have a theme per se. Mm-hmm. It's just 25 people that I personally emailed and asked if they'd like to be in the book, and they all agreed.
Mm-hmm. So how'd you get the idea for this one?
That's an interesting question. I knew a couple people who were doing anthologies, and well, I had a job kind of fall through, and 2 weeks after that happened, I sat up in the middle of the night and it was just like an anthology. I have this podcast where I interview webcomic artists, so I had the connections already. Like I knew all of the people, and it just occurred to me that this doesn't exist.
Right.
That this sort of collection of talent, for whatever reason, nobody was doing this. And I asked friends and told them about this idea, and they all said, you should do this. It was kind of important to me that like it be a good thing. Like as an artist, business seems immoral. So this wasn't art. I was moving from the side of the table from artist to editor. And so I was concerned about this being sort of unethical. And I told artists, and they were like, no. This is a good idea. If you can make a good thing and you can pay artists and you can sell it at a fair price, then this is ethical. And I was like, okay. And I started to feel better about the idea. And so once I ran it by a couple of artists who were excited, I was like, okay, let's do this.
So was it easy finding the artists? What was the selection process like?
Another good question. I was very strategic about it. I wrote a list of all the people that I thought would say yes quickly. And then I wrote another list that was people that the project should have, like big names. And then I went about asking them very strategically, because I knew that this person would say yes if another person was already on board. So every time I sent out an invitation and I got a yes, I would add that person's like picture to the end of the next invitation, so to show them that other people had already gotten on board. Yeah. So, and I hate to say this because I don't know if the people who are in the book are going to see it, but I kind of played people against each other. Like if I knew if I wanted this guy in, that if I got this guy before, that they'd feel more likely.
Well, hopefully
peer pressure.
They had an idea of of that anyway. Like if they're already sort of getting on board because someone else is, then they were thinking that person is in it. It must be a good idea.
That was the idea. Was to trick them into feeling safe.
But in a nice way.
Yeah, it is. So there's this guy Nick Selleck who's a really big deal. He does Heart and Brain, and he's doing he has a lesser-known strip called Anomaly Town, and which nobody has the rights to besides him. So I asked him because, amongst other things, he's probably the most business-savvy cartoonist in our community. So him being on board says he trusts this, and he has a lawyer.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
So if he's not worried about it, then people who don't have access to a lawyer probably can assume that Nick's stamp on this means
it's legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was part of the strategy.
So was it all invitation only, or did you do any solicitation, soliciting submissions or anything?
No, I knew. There was a couple of people in the book who've never been on the podcast, but I have had interactions. Christian Nygaard is I didn't want to get the country wrong, Norwegian cartoonist that I'm a fan of. I've never spoken to him on the phone. Most of the people I've spoken to on the phone. And It was all invitation only.
So why did you decide to do a Kickstarter?
Oh, well, because I don't have the money to print the book. No.
Well, I mean, like, okay, well, why did you choose Kickstarter as the method of getting the money?
Kickstarter is wonderful.
Yeah.
It takes away all the risk. The only thing I risked was my time. If it failed, I would only have wasted my time. No money would have been lost.
Right.
Now, in a way, that's not true because I did have to pay the cover artist regardless of whether or not the project funded. So I had already sunk $250 into it, but that was fun. That's my friend Min.
Yeah.
And I was happy to be able to pay an artist to do wonderful work. Happier even if the project funded, which it looks like it will. So yeah, the main reason to go the Kickstarter route is that you sell everything up front. So I'm not making this book so that I can go to conventions and sell it at conventions. I'm making it to sell to the people right now.
Right.
So when this finishes, I have to design the book and print the book and mail the book, but then I'm done. It's a business.
Right. Oh, I should also mention right now that yes, his Kickstarter has about a week left, I think. And you're about where in your goal?
We're 97%. We have 6 days remaining. The last day is the 27th, this Friday. Finishes at midnight Eastern Standard Time.
That's good. So I'm going to have a link to the Kickstarter in the description below so that you can go and still probably back the Kickstarter.
You can buy
if you want to.
Hundreds of copies at cost. No, wait, that's wrong. At the full price.
Okay. So you said this basically, like, once the Kickstarter is done and you've mailed out all the copies that people have essentially, the backers have gotten, right? You're done. But do you have plans for the book post Kickstarter campaign? Like, you're going to start making more of them? Try and sell them on Amazon, or? Well,
as of like a couple days ago, I started to think about this because the book is becoming a reality.
Yeah.
It's close enough now that I could personally pay the rest of the... what I'm going to ask the people who are in the book, because a couple of them, like Nick that I mentioned, Chris, who does Lunar Baboon, they go to enough conventions a year that they may actually be interested in getting 100 copies of themselves.
Right.
So it's possible that we will do what's called an overrun of like 300 to 500 copies and then distribute them amongst creators who have use for that. I mean, one of the other services that I'm providing to these artists is that when you run a Kickstarter, you may accidentally end up with 500 books that nobody is buying.
Right.
My first Kickstarter I ever did, I printed 750 books and I sold 70. So just this year, so it took me like 3 years to get rid of those books, and I gave a lot of them away for free. So having books is only good if you have the ability to sell books. That's a big lesson from Kickstarter, is more books isn't necessarily better.
Right.
If you don't have the ability to sell them, if you don't have a good online store, or if you don't travel, if you don't go to conventions, then you don't need books, which is why I'm running this Kickstarter where we're basically just pre-selling the books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. No, it's an interesting business model, I think.
It's contrary to the spirit of Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want you to
be creating something that will go somewhere.
No, they want
further.
They want you to sell merchandise in addition to the book. I just want to make the book.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They want you to sell stickers and like a deluxe copy of the book and a T-shirt and a CD and a digital copy of the book. And for me, I was less interested in that. I really just wanted to make the book.
Right.
And the fact that we're barely succeeding proves that the Kickstarter still wants to be Kickstarter.
Yeah. Well, I have noticed that you've added some stretch goals.
I did.
Yeah. And you want to talk about what those are?
Sure. I'm really happy about both of my stretch goals. The first one, if we hit 126% of our goal, which is 600 people, I believe, Reza Farzmand, who is an artist who does poorly drawn lines, he will write the foreword for us. He's a very interesting and intelligent person, besides being a very talented cartoonist, so I'm interested to hear what he's going to say or read what he's going to write. In the conversation I had with him on the podcast, he said When will they just be comics?
Right.
What's the difference between webcomics and comics? When will they just be comics? And that's why I reached out to him for the foreword, because I feel like this might be that time, because this is a print collection of webcomics, which is an oxymoron.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't think I've ever really heard of an anthology of webcomics really before. I mean,
I think it's the first.
Individual creators put out, collections of their comics. Like, I'm sure Mega Tokyo has put out one, and a lot of the sort of the big ones from that are still surviving, I think, have all been surviving on putting out paper collections and stuff like this.
You're talking about individual webcomic artists?
Yeah, individual creators.
Yeah, I think of Boom. She's done 8 books. And books are a way to make money.
Yeah.
In a weird way. Like webcomics don't make any money.
I know.
But people will pay for books. This book, one of its competitive advantages is, sure, you can go read all of any of these people's stuff online, but you probably don't know all 25 of these people. So regardless of if you're a big fan of 2/3 of them, there's still going to be something new for you in there.
And it's a good way to introduce people to a lot of creators who maybe aren't very well known, but have their own sort of little audiences.
Yeah, we're going to
sort of cross-pollinate.
Yeah,
cross-pollinate. A little, yeah. All right, so before you started this project, and I guess possibly ongoing, you mentioned you have a webcat, podcast?
I have a webcat.
Yeah, a webcat. That would be the awesomest cat ever. It would be so popular. You have a podcast called Podcomics Webcast. So how did you get started with that? Are you doing that still right now?
Yeah. No, I just put out a mini-sode yesterday. This actually ties in with the book. The book and the podcast are actually very related. The cover artist, whose name is Min Christensen, she's a Danish cartoonist, and she does a strip called Fail by Error. In 2015, when I had just started being a professional cartoonist, I went to my first convention, which was in Vancouver. So I went to VanCaf 2015, and I got really depressed after it. I sat there and I just saw really talented people, and I just didn't feel a part of that world. And so afterwards, I was just telling her how I didn't feel like I fit in, and she said, start a podcast. And I thought about it for months, like, what would I do a podcast about? Before I realized that the one thing that I have some expertise in is webcomics, that I know all these people. So 3 years later, I get to make a book which has all the people from the podcast, and the person who inspired it did the cover.
That's pretty cool. So what do you talk about on your podcast?
It follows the same formula every time, but I allow for a lot of digressions. The heart of the podcast is about how each individual artist comes up with their joke ideas.
Right.
I like to hear how people, what they write down when they have an idea.
Yeah.
So this guy recently told me, he was just reading off his ideas, and he said, rattlesnake babysitter. And I think that's exactly what I'm looking for, is that I want to hear how it was recorded. I especially like the failed ideas, like to see what didn't work out.
Yeah.
That's always interesting to me. But yeah, we talk about the name, the look, the last comic they did, the next comic they're going to do, seeds, which is what I call the joke ideas. Then we do themes, plugs, and thanks.
Yeah. And the format, I've seen a couple of them, and it seems to be like almost like a Skype conversation. So is that essentially what you're doing? Like you're recording
exactly,
and then you just sort of intercut them?
It is a Skype conversation. It is edited.
Yeah.
So I talk for maybe 90 minutes, and the episode is 45 to an hour. So I it's manipulated in the sense that it can be shortened.
Yeah.
I don't rearrange it at all. But it is an abbreviated version of the conversation that occurred in reality.
And you release minisodes and full ones?
Yeah, the idea there was that, it gives me something to promote between episodes. So I take a good snippet, usually under 5 minutes, and I use that every other time to promote the podcast.
Where can people watch or listen to your podcast?
I guess I recommend SoundCloud. That's where it's hosted. It's on iTunes, but I don't get as much data from iTunes. So I send people to SoundCloud because there I know who's listening, and how many people. I get metrics there.
Right, and it's also on YouTube, I think. Right? There
were some experiments with making it into a video format. Still might get back there. If I win the lottery, if I just have more time.
Yeah.
Because the other thing about that is that I have to get consent from the artists again to then show their face, because one of the advantages of being a web cartoonist is that nobody knows what you look like, and half of my guests are female, and it's not easy being a woman on the internet.
No, I can see that would be an issue,
Yeah, so I respect everybody's privacy, and frankly, I just have to go back and I'd have to see if they're interested in being, outed.
That's one way of putting it, yeah.
Well, privacy, you can't get it back.
No, you definitely can't. And your own webcomic, the Daneman?
It's done.
Done?
Yeah.
Completely?
Yeah, I haven't made one in 9 months. That was partly because I really enjoyed pinning it on a large corporation, the murder of my comics, but in truth, it had been a very long time that I've been making them, and they never achieved the size of audience that your average web cartoon does. So I took a break.
Yeah.
I have another thing called The Brothers Dane, which is another weird experiment where it's made only from recycled parts of old cartoons. I make no new comic parts. I'm remixing it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm the first person to do that.
Yeah. You might be. It's still available though, just to read.
The Daneman?
Yeah, because I know I've read some of it already.
It's on Webtoons, who are the evil corporation. It's also, as of this November, I'm going to start putting them on Tapastic again. Tapastic is now known as Tapas.
Okay.
It'll be there. You can see it on Instagram.
Yeah, you've been posting
I've been posting all of the Tapastic comics on Instagram this month, just to get people motivated.
Get it moving, yeah. So art style wise, I think it was quite interesting, sort of self-portrait. All the characters were a sort of a self-portrait of you. And you can you tell me a little about how you were making it? And how you started making it?
Well, the Danemen were a rotoscoped comic strip. Right. So I studied film in university, and while I was there, I really took pre-production seriously. So I would write scripts. And I would storyboard them. And while I was doing that, I thought, I got my first digital camera in 2004 or so. And for those who don't remember, it was a really big deal when digital cameras came out, because for the first time ever, you could take as many photographs as you wanted. Well, actually, probably just 200. But at the time, that was 24 rolls of film.
Yeah.
And you could see them right away.
Yeah.
And this made all sorts of things possible, namely my comic strip. So I started to experiment with doing sort of photographic storyboards, and I didn't like them. They were ugly.
Yeah.
Photographs are not as attractive as drawings. So in 2001, there was a film called Waking Life, which is Richard Linklater's sort of, it's animated, it's rotoscoped, and it's just bad philosophy, I suppose. But the visual style was very interesting to me.
Yeah.
And then Sin City and 300 came out in 2005, and I was like, oh, okay, I kind of got it. So I started making comics in the style of basically 300 or Sin City the movie, which is funny because those are comics turned into movies. I took comics, turned into movies, and turned it back into comics.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. All right. So, I guess you could say that you're really sort of breaking new ground with this anthology. But are there any influences or anything you've looked to in the creation of it and how you're putting it together as inspiration for how you're working?
Anthology-wise?
Yeah, I mean, like how you're putting it together. Or
Not really. No. Like I said earlier, a couple people put the word anthology into my head. I'll plug them right now because the first one is Michael Sweater. He's a cartoonist out of Philly, and his Kickstarter for Cool Boy magazine will be launching any day now. And so he said he was going to do an anthology, and that was the first time I heard it. And then Alex Park, who's a gentleman who lives here in town, he has a collective called Tabulet. And he had been running a website that was for comics, and then every year they were doing a print anthology. And I told him, I was like, I think that's really smart to do that like you have a website that then once a year puts out a book. So those two people were doing anthologies, and that kind of inspired me to think about it myself. Book-wise, I modeled it after Gary Larson, like these little like 9 by 9 inch collections, like if you know Wiener Dog art. I had them on my bookshelf, so I picked them up, and I'm like, that's the size, that's the weight I'm going to go for. So the book is physically similar to mid 90s Andrews McMeel's comic collections.
Do you have any of your own work in the anthology?
Yeah, I'm one of the 25 artists.
You're one of the 25?
Well, part of the reason for that is the way I pay everybody is interesting. So every artist is paid 10 cents per copy of the book.
Right.
And in addition, if we exceed 100% funding, I offer profit sharing.
Right.
So, and I was very upfront with everybody, like, here's how you're going to be paid and here's how I'm going to be paid. And I take my fee as a designer and like captain of the entire project. There's a fee for that. But then I'm also one of the artists. So I get what's probably going to be around $150 for the 3 comic strips, and then 3% of zero now. So that'll be good. Actually, no, sorry. I take 25% as the captain, and then I also take 3% as an artist. So I make 28% of currently $0.
And in a way also it's kind of like you're saying, I'm putting my own work in this. I believe in it enough that I'm willing to, be part of this as well, in a way, you could say.
No, it's more like this. I learned a long time ago that if you want to go to the party, throw the party.
Yeah.
if you want to make sure that you're invited. Throw the party.
Yeah, but you're throwing the party and you're actually there. So there's that, right?
Well, you have to get your own party. It's at your house. That's the truth.
You could throw the party and just leave.
If somebody else did this collection, I wouldn't be in it.
No?
No. My comics don't look great next to other people's. I've actually thought about this. The exact strips I'm going to select are going to be brighter and cartoonier than if it were my own book.
Right.
Because I want it to sit next to the other ones. Cartoons look good next to cartoons. Photographs don't look good next to cartoons. So I have a couple ideas of which strips I'm going to put in.
Right. Well, what are your artistic influences, you would say, in your own work?
I have no idea. Like for my comics, I'm again, film. So I think a lot about Buster Keaton, but I don't think that my comics resemble Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin, really.
Although they are silent webcomics.
Yeah, they're silent.
An interesting idea.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think all film informs what I do. It's all about facial expressions. So, if there's an actor you can think of who's particularly good at emoting silently, I don't know. People compare me to Mr. Bean occasionally, and as time has gone on, I've learned to take that as a compliment.
It probably is meant as one.
It's always meant as one.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up watching Mr. Bean, and I don't think that Rowan Atkinson's a particularly attractive gentleman, but what they're latching onto is the silent. And as I watch it, I'm like, he is very good at that.
No, I mean, I get that. I honestly was not a huge fan of Mr. Bean.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really more of a fan of his spoken comedy.
Sure.
You know, I think he's a genius at certain forms of comedy, certain the monologue form of comedy. He's amazing. But silent stuff I never really got into. But I get where people would be like, Mr. Bean, because Mr. Bean just is where he exploded in North America, I think.
Yeah, and globally, I think it's very popular because you can appreciate it without a sense of language.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need translation as much, really.
Yeah.
So you are doing art professionally, right?
Yes.
You're, like
technically.
Technically.
When I do my taxes, it says cartoonist.
Yeah. Well, cartoonist is art.
Yeah, no.
I hope so.
What I mean is, legally,
yes.
I'm an artist.
Right. Legally, you're an artist. So how do you fit that into your daily life? How do you fit your art into your daily life? I suppose it is basically your daily life.
It's easy. When you do what I do, you work from home and you work 7 days a week. Just you work whenever you want.
Right.
So I get up early. I try to exercise, though it's harder in this city.
Is it?
You take frequent breaks. Yeah, it's really hot in the summer. Really, I lived in Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
Where it's temperate.
Right.
Here it's awful. So yeah, I work every day. I work a little bit. You know, like I would rather work 5 hours a day, 7 days a week than 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
How do you deal with when you encounter stress or obstacles? Have you encountered any particular obstacles while working on this Kickstarter or previous
Not an
projects?
obstacle. I mean, it's been going slow.
Right.
When you do a Kickstarter, you really want it to fund on day one, and this one has been moving at a perfect 45-degree angle from 0 to 100%. Like it's going to fund on the last day at midnight.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
Do you experience any stress related to that?
A lot.
How do you deal with it?
I do yoga, honestly.
Oh,
yeah. And I take walks, like I said. I limit the amount of times a day that I let myself check. So, I won't check first thing in the morning. I usually wait till like noon, and then maybe once before bed. Because checking doesn't do anything to...
Right.
Though it does tell you need to promote, I suppose. I adhere to like sort of a promotion schedule, irrespective of where it is. So I think that's important. But yeah, distance is a good way to avoid stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So have you ever experienced block?
What do you mean?
Like creative block?
No.
No?
No, not really. When I got the job making comics, I had to make 2 comics a week for 3 years.
Right.
And a lot of the comics I made were not good, but I was never short of ideas. The podcast I do, which is all about writing down your ideas, that came from I assumed everybody was like me and just had this long list of ideas.
Right.
I have found that not everybody is that way, but most cartoonists are that way, that they have written down a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
If you've, like the Cyanide and Happiness guys, they've done over 1,000 cartoons. So I don't understand how they're still coming up with ideas then, but I guess you just get into a place where it's not about any specific aspect of an idea, it's about execution. So you really could just make a joke about anything. I suppose. I don't know. I've only done 300 strips, so
where do you get your ideas? I know it's a terrible question to ask an artist, but
it's more
where
that
do you think you get your ideas? I guess you could say.
I think you develop the sense that you've just had an idea which is funny. It's the impulse to go, ooh, I should write that down.
Yeah.
You're always having ideas that are worthy of comics. It's that as soon as you need them, you need to develop the skill of recognizing that you've just had one and write it down. So, for example, as I was walking to meet you for coffee, I spoke into my phone in the Keep app something about a car alarm. I think it's funny that car alarms exist because never have I heard one and thought, I better go see if someone's breaking in. Like, I don't think a car's ever been broken into.
Yeah.
I feel like it's always just an accident that they're going off. So that's kind of funny. So I wrote down, like, has a car alarm ever stopped a car from being stolen? Because I don't think it has.
Probably not. It pretty much just annoys people.
Well, it came from, I saw Birdemic the other day. And it's a horrible movie. Don't see it. But the sound is so bad. There are entire scenes where there's just screeching of these birds for the whole scene, and it felt like a car alarm. And I was like, all you want when you hear a car alarm is for it to stop. You don't...
So you don't care what's going on.
You don't care about anything else. You're just like, and then when it stops, you're like, whew. Finally, that car alarm is over.
Yeah.
That's it. It's effective in being annoying, but not effective as, like...
Whole scenes of screeching?
Yeah, it's a very bad movie.
Ugh.
Very bad.
I bet you, if you asked the director, they would say, that is totally intended. Like, that's my art.
I do think that James Wynn would say that, and I don't think he's right.
All right. What's something you wish you'd known about comics and about, even about, like, starting anthologies before you embarked in these projects?
Starting anthologies, I'm still learning. I mean, my next Kickstarter probably will have A, B, C, D, and E offered. So, like, we'll have a bookmark or something.
Right.
But with comics, that's a tough one because I feel like if you want to succeed in webcomics, you need to make something which is enjoyed by the largest number of people. So not so much art as entertainment.
Right.
And that's not really my style. So I don't think I would tell young me to make relatability comics, but it's almost like saying, don't try to make money in comics.
Well,
the 4 superstars I know have really mastered how to write a strip where when you read it, you say, oh, that's so me. Or you send it to your friend saying, that's so you.
Yeah.
And that's what people want from comics right now. I guess that wasn't true before social media.
Right.
I mean, there was a huge period of time where people went to websites to look at content. And we had a lot more variety in webcomics back then.
Yeah. Well, there were like a number of bubbles, I guess. And they burst.
Yeah, people don't go to individual websites as much as they used to. They expect to get their content from Facebook.
Fed from Facebook or Twitter or Instagram.
That's,
or whatever other social media that the kids are using these days.
I would love it if those sites paid content creators directly.
They won't.
They don't have to.
They don't. Yeah, that's true. They as long as they don't have to, they won't.
We could probably legislate that they did, but
they'd find a way around it, probably. All right. So, do you have any advice for people who want to do something similar to what you're doing, or who want to make comics? Any more advice, I should say, because we have talked about a few things already.
The standard advice for webcomics: have a schedule and stick to it. So make 2 or 3 comics a week. Always update at the same day and the same time. Make a lot. Make as many as you can. Right now, I think Instagram's a good place to be seen. Those audiences continue to grow, whereas on Facebook, they've pretty much locked the door. Unless you're very lucky. I don't know that audiences grow on Facebook anymore. Twitter, not really a place for...
Not really, no.
I mean, I read comics on there all the time, but I don't know that people... It's not really a place for webcomics specifically. Instagram can be. Besides that...
Do you use Tumblr or anything like this?
No, Tumblr's dead.
Tumblr's dead.
Yeah. I mean...
I never even went on Tumblr, so...
I missed it. I
missed it completely.
Yeah. So I have a Tumblr, and I have no idea how many people subscribe to me there.
Yeah.
It's not many.
You might have this huge following you don't know about.
I did promote the Kickstarter. Whenever I promote a project, I go to all the... I promote it on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Do you get much response on LinkedIn?
I was really proud of a video that I made, so I put it there. Basically, also I now can say that I use Premiere, so this is proof.
There
and
you
it's
go.
on LinkedIn.
That's true.
So if anybody wants to hire me, I'll say, well, you can see a video I made on LinkedIn.
There you go.
Synergy.
Yeah.
Advice for cartoonists. Tapastic is one of the few places which splits ad revenue, also known as Avenue for short.
Of course.
Ad revenue with the creators. I believe the deal is still 70-30. So the creator gets 70% of ad revenue. So that's a good place to earn a little bit of money. Patreon's a pretty big deal these days. So those didn't exist when I first started out. So that's get on all of these places.
Do you have a Patreon?
I do. Patreon.com/The Daneman.
We will have links to as much of what we can find of what we've talked about in the description.
Okay.
So, all right. So we're near the end here.
I have one more thing I want to say to future cartoonists.
Yes.
Study animation. There's a lot of jobs in animation right now, thanks to Netflix and a lot of other places, like Nickelodeon. And the people I know who work in animation have wonderful webcomics. And so there's stability in animation where there is not in webcomics. And you get to do the same thing.
Yeah. That's interesting. So is there anything more you want to say about the Kickstarter? Obviously, I think we've covered basically how to back it, and what you get the book, right?
It costs $20 and it ships anywhere in the world.
Yeah, $20 US,
yes.
right? Yeah, $20 US.
Yeah.
Which is not that bad, really, with the exchange even.
Who knows?
Now.
By October, maybe it'll be the same again. Who
knows? You never know.
You have to buy it in the next 7 days.
All right. So thank you, David. This has been Everyday Expertise. I'm Angela, and thank you for watching. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this interview. Be sure to share this video with friends and colleagues who may also enjoy this topic. Let us know your thoughts by leaving a comment below, or check the description for our social media. See you next time.